Let's look at a hypothetical situation in order to understand how to successfully use SWOT analysis. Risky P, a business consultant, will be helping the international organic beverage company, Soda Above, understand how international environments impact their business operations or day-to-day work activities. When working in any environment, an organization should measure what they're doing well and how they can improve what they're doing. In order to help Soda Above get on the right track, Risky P suggests that Soda Above start using SWOT analysis, which is a strategic tool for identifying the internal and external factors that positively and negatively impact an organization's success. Thus, SWOT analysis can help Soda Above to better understand what internal and external factors will help them to operate smoothly in international environments. It will also identify the challenges they'll need to overcome when operating in different regions. The internal factors, or strengths and weaknesses, look at what aspects within an organization are impacting success. The external factors, or opportunities and threats, look at the relationship between potential opportunities and potential risks in the organization's environment. SWOT can be analyzed using a variety of questions for each category: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Some examples per category include strengths, such as the internal things that the company is doing well and what sets them apart. What is the organization doing well? What is their competitive advantage? How does the organization meet consumer demands? Weaknesses, or the internal things that the company can improve. What should be improved? What isn't working? Where is the organization spending too much? What prevents products from selling? Opportunities, such as the external factors the company can take advantage of in order to improve. Can the organization expand in their current markets? What other markets can the organization expand into? Is there a growing demand for the products or services being offered? How can technology improve the organization? And threats, or the external forces that could harm the company. What challenges does or will the organization face in the market? How does the economy impact profitability? Have consumers stopped buying the organization's products? Has changing technology negatively impacted the organization? Evaluating each category through important questions can provide insight into the overall health of the business and can help an organization see potential problems. The analysis from SWOT helps to explain where the organization is today and can assess how far it is from where it wants to be. Thus, SWOT can be used to forecast or estimate a particular outcome. It can be used to predict the possible effects of a business plan on future operations. SWOT helps businesses understand how to leverage what they do well and also addresses the challenges they need to overcome. Risky P explains to Soda Above that this is especially important when trying to develop an international operations strategy or a plan of action for achieving a specific goal. Okay, so Risky P will now use a SWOT analysis to take a look at Soda Above and help them forecast the implementation of global operations in a new country. Here's an example. Strengths: strong customer loyalty, high-quality marketing, proven employee training programs. Weaknesses: no strong competitive advantage, low capital, will need to take on loans, little knowledge of local culture. Opportunities: increasing health consciousness, low cost of operating in said country, cost of importing and exporting from said country is low. And threats: currency in said country is unstable, unskilled local workforce. With a first look at the results, Soda Above can begin to forecast what its opportunities will look like and make plans to achieve success. For example, Soda Above knows they have proven training programs, but they don't possess a great knowledge of the local culture. Knowing this, they can take steps to learn about the local culture and find locals to help them create a hiring and training strategy. As a whole, SWOT analysis helps organizations forecast where they may run into problems, and at the same time, they can view their strengths that can be utilized to achieve success. Let's review. The environment an organization works in can impact their business operations or day-to-day working procedures. Companies can use a variety of tools to evaluate the advantages and disadvantages of operating in a particular environment. SWOT analysis is a strategic management tool which helps organizations to identify what internal and external factors are positively and negatively impacting how they operate. The internal factors are the organization's strengths and weaknesses. These are the areas where the organization excels and where they need to improve. Strengths and weaknesses can include an organization's competitive advantage, the quality of their market strategy, and how much financial capital the organization has. The external factors include the opportunities and threats that an organization faces. Opportunities are anywhere that the organization can improve or advance its goals, while threats are any obstacles that the organization will need to overcome. Together, the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats are a holistic way of forecasting or estimating how well the organization will operate. This tool can especially help a company to develop an effective international organizational strategy or plan of action because it helps them to identify where they'll do well and what areas they'll need to improve upon when operating in a particular region.
Think about a product you purchase regularly that you absolutely love. What is it that you love about that product? How did you find out about the product? How did the company capture your attention and convince you to purchase its product? Now, what if that product was to be marketed internationally? Would the same marketing approach that grabbed your attention work for others around the world? If the answer is yes, this is called global standardization. The general definition of global standardization is the ability to use standard marketing internationally. In other words, it's the ability for a company or business to use the same marketing strategy from one country to the next and across various cultures. When a product has basically the same appeal all over the world, global standardization is a useful tool. Why would a company want to use global standardization? Well, if a customer in the United States uses a product one way and a customer in Japan uses the product the same way, a company can utilize global standardization. So, what are the positive aspects? Costs. A company does not have to pay for special marketing for each market. One marketing strategy can be used in multiple areas of the world, therefore cutting the cost of having to develop several marketing strategies. Brand. A strong brand can have the same effect in different areas around the world. What makes a strong presence in one country can have the same effect in other countries. Now, there's at least one negative aspect to global standardization. Sensibility. While some countries may appreciate and accept a product, others may not agree or have a different opinion about that product. A Western country may view a car or a washing machine as normal in everyday life, while a developing country could view the same item as a luxury. And while one country may sell a health product using sensual advertisement, a more conservative country might need a more rational message. These differences in perspective could force a company to develop a more customizable market strategy for different areas of the world. You may be asking, what are some examples of companies that can utilize global standardization? One company that is a well-known advocate of global standardization is Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola is able to use standard packaging, distribution, and brands in international markets. This allows the company to market its product in a similar fashion to consumers worldwide, while at the same time cutting costs and maintaining a strong, recognizable brand. McDonald's, however, is a company that is on the other end of the spectrum. While the company is often found internationally, not all countries equally accept its products and its cultural ties. For example, in the Middle East, the Western and American culture are not always appreciated. This forces McDonald's to deviate from a standard marketing strategy and configure one that is unique to the country in which it is reaching out to. After all, not all consumers in every country have the same wants and needs. For example, McDonald's sells falafel in Egypt, gazpacho in Spain, poutine in Canada, various vegetarian products in India, and taro pie in Asia. In some countries, it does not sell beef or pork products to respect religious beliefs. The range of main dishes and even details like sauces in international McDonald's is enormous. The following images from left to right show a McDonald's in Russia, in McDonald's delivery by motorcycle in South Korea, and a bowl of kungi served in McDonald's in Indonesia. Let's review. Global standardization is the ability to use standard marketing internationally. While consumers all around the United States may take for granted many popular brands, such as Coca-Cola and McDonald's, consumers in other parts of the world may not have the same perspective. They may not be exposed to a plethora of commercials and signs that have become common in the U.S. This forces a company to consider the impact, or lack thereof, of using the same techniques that work well here in other parts of the world. A company needs to ask itself important questions. Is its brand strong worldwide? Is cost an issue? Will one marketing strategy reach consumers of various cultures, or does it need to customize a marketing plan that is unique to each market? All of these questions are important to answer when considering if global standardization is the right choice.
Going global is even easier than it has been in the past. Small entrepreneurs can market their product overseas from their living room, while large corporations have access to consumers across the world 24 hours a day by using the Internet. How is this possible? The Internet and the increasing growth of technology make it easy to reach consumers with websites. The Diaper Sponge Pants Company has recently expanded their market to both India and China. Fortunately, it has been a very easy process due to an e-commerce framework that is available. E-commerce is the buying and selling of products or services over electronic systems such as the Internet. Using the Internet to sell to international consumers is a very low-risk business decision. Companies do not have to tie up huge financial investments through franchising, direct investment, or brick-and-mortar stores overseas. The Internet and new technologies have allowed companies to easily expand to overseas markets. Diaper Sponge Pants has a dynamic website that allows international orders. It also provides a tremendous database for the company to use to build their customer base. Software has been developed to translate between languages, which makes communication with international customers easier for companies to implement. There's also software that provides currency conversions. Global shippers, such as UPS and FedEx, help provide easy international logistics for product expansions. The biggest advantage is the ability to reach huge, growing target markets to increase corporate market share and profits. Countries such as India and China have a developing middle class with a large disposable income. The market is ripe for American companies to promote their products and services for long-term growth opportunities. It is very easy to customize websites for each international country, which can reflect local customs, currency, and advertising messages. Along with advantages, there are also disadvantages and issues for companies who use e-commerce. Diaper Sponge Pants Company has an unconditional refund policy that they offer as part of their promotional mix. They have to run into an issue when trying to sell their diapers with that promotion in Germany. Evidently, Germany has a maximum 14-day return policy due to a court-issued ruling. This law made it difficult for Diaper Sponge Pants to promote their unconditional refund policy. Another key difference is the use of credit cards. Many countries do not embrace or accept credit cards. Diaper Sponge Pants relies on credit cards for almost all of their online transactions. For example, many consumers in Japan do not use credit cards. Instead, they order their products online and pick them up at a local brick-and-mortar store. Many other countries also do not like to use credit cards because they feel it gives too much private information out to customers and companies. This is an issue for Diaper Sponge Pants as they rely on website sales using credit cards and then delivering the product with their shipper. Diaper Sponge Pants needs to establish a brick-and-mortar store who will handle their diaper orders for Japanese sales orders. Companies can successfully use the internet to reach international customers. The marketing managers must take into account marketing mix adaptation to ensure that they are promoting correctly to the different target markets. This means that they have to understand different cultures and make adjustments to the marketing mix. For example, Diaper Sponge Pants came to realize that Indian consumers did not have the disposable income to purchase very large amounts of the disposable diapers. The marketing mix needed an adjustment in the P for product. The diaper company developed a diaper product that contained smaller amounts of diapers, a smaller price, and the ability to be stocked in stores with smaller shelf space. Let's review. Companies need to consider developing an international customer base in order to stay competitive in the global marketplace. E-commerce is one method that can be used to enter an international market. The risk is lower than establishing a brick-and-mortar store or directly investing overseas. There are pros and cons to internet marketing, and the need to grow market share and the availability of international profits makes it an easy decision to market overseas.
The title of this lesson alone probably brings to mind images of advertisements and products by the owner of that slogan, Nike, one of the world's most popular and recognizable brands. Not only is Nike successful at marketing their products in the United States, but they have grown into a truly international company through their approach to global marketing strategies. Global marketing strategy, according to Oxford University Press, is marketing on a worldwide scale, taking note of differences, similarities, and opportunities in order to meet global objectives. Or, simply put, it's creating a strategy that fits the market you're trying to reach, incorporating the geographic, cultural, and societal norms of that region. What works for one market may not work for another. Global marketing helps create a strategy for a similar product in a different market. Nike's business and marketing strategy, both at home and abroad, help keep them at the forefront of their industry of footwear and athletic apparel. Nike succeeds in global marketing because they understand world markets and how to reach each audience in a personalized approach that works for different languages, cultures, customs, needs, and differences. Nike is one of the most successful companies on the globe, both from a sales standpoint and in their marketing initiatives. Here are a few of the ways Nike achieves success in reaching varied audiences with the right message. From its beginnings with the now world-recognized slogan, "Just Do It," Nike has succeeded in marketing across borders through the use of emotional advertising and branding. Rather than selling a product directly, Nike has managed to build a strategy that appeals to a customer's aspirations or emotions, to build an attachment to a brand, as opposed to selling the product solely for the product's sake. Nike routinely relies on the emotions of activity, heroism, success, achievement, and triumph to appeal to customers, a strategy that has been successful regardless of the market. Some of Nike's emotional branding tactics have included advertisements with phrasing like, "Anticipate greatness," or "Your only limit is you." Appealing to basic human emotion and desire knows no boundary. It's a strategy that works as well in Europe or Asia as it does in the United States. One of Nike's most successful strategies that has eclipsed the boundaries of country and culture is the introduction of Nike ID, which allows shoppers to customize products that align with their own styles and cultural preferences. For example, a consumer can choose different colors, color combinations, patterns, and shoelaces, as well as being able to customize a shoe for favorite regional sports. Though Nike offers a full complement of athletic shoes ready to buy off of store shelves, they recognized that consumers have individual tastes and preferences, particularly consumers in other countries, with varying cultural and societal differences. Nike has built much of its marketing and advertising with the help of superstar athletes and sports sponsorships. By selecting international sponsorships and highlighting international athletes, the company has been able to build a broader, global interest in their brand and put their name and logo at the forefront of global sporting events. For example, Nike has partnered with the English football club Manchester United to not only penetrate the European market, but also reach consumers from all markets who are interested in soccer, known outside of the United States as football. Sponsoring an athletic team or an event such as World Cup Soccer, or using an internationally recognized superstar like Cristiano Ronaldo or Rory McIlroy, has helped Nike gain traction in other countries where different sports and athletes take center stage. There's no doubt we live in an increasingly technological world, and Nike has excelled at reaching various audiences with a culturally appropriate message. In particular, Nike uses individualized and customized social media channels to support various sports that are popular in a particular country. For example, Nike hosts a dedicated social media account for fans and athletes of the sport of cricket, and also uses appropriate languages and dialects in not only their products, such as a shirt that says España on it, but on their websites and other online platforms. For example, Nike has a website that displays entirely in Spanish. It's hard to find much fault with Nike's global marketing strategies because they do most everything well. However, there have been a few instances of marketing failures at Nike. In 2011, Nike embarked on another superstar partnership with double amputee and runner Oscar Pistorius, pouring millions into global marketing campaigns and advertisements featuring the athlete in starting blocks with the phrase, "I am the bullet in the chamber." Shortly after the ad ran, Pistorius was charged in the murder of his girlfriend, Riva Steenkamp, and Nike was forced to suspend all ads and their relationship with the fallen athlete. It cost the company millions of dollars. Partnering with the wrong superstar, even one that's viewed as slightly controversial or provocative, can be a marketing fail no company wants. Additionally, not having a solid grasp of cultural preferences and expectations can impede marketing efforts. Take, for example, Nike's push to encourage more people in China to take up running and jogging. These have not traditionally been popular activities in that culture, and health clubs and gyms are viewed as activities for only the wealthy. The activity of running is generally only introduced in a school setting in the form of forced physical education classes. It's typically not a leisure activity either, as many of China's population bases are located in heavily polluted areas. Global marketing strategy is a way of selling a product or service to an international audience while taking into account cultural and societal norms and preferences. Nike has succeeded over the years in presenting its products in a way that resonates with an audience, no matter where they're located. Some of Nike's best tactics include emotional marketing, Nike ID, incorporating technology and building relationships with global sports teams and athletes. While Nike's marketing failures have been minimal, aligning with the wrong athlete or not understanding local customs can create a divide in messaging.
Globalization refers to the changes in the world where we are moving away from self-contained countries and toward a more integrated world. Globalization of business is the change in a business from a company associated with a single country to one that operates in multiple countries. Imagine for a moment that you run a business that produces digital cameras. How would globalization impact your company? The impact of globalization on business can be placed into two broad categories: market globalization and production globalization. Market globalization is the decline in barriers to selling in countries other than the home country. This change will make it easier for your company to begin selling products internationally, since lower tariffs keep consumer prices lower and fewer restrictions when crossing borders makes it easier for a company to enter a foreign market. It also means that companies must consider other cultures when developing their business strategies, and potentially adjust the product and marketing messages if they aren't appropriate in the target country. This may not be an issue in the camera industry, but a hamburger company entering India would definitely need to revisit their product and strategies to be successful. Production globalization is the sourcing of materials and services from other countries to gain advantage from price differences in different nations. For example, you might purchase materials and components for your cameras from multiple countries and then assemble the product in yet another international location to reduce your costs of production. This change should lead to lower prices for consumers since products cost less to produce. It also impacts jobs, since production may shift from one country to another, usually from more developed countries to less developed countries with lower average wage rates. The primary effects of globalization include distributed operations. Companies may locate facilities in multiple countries. There are many reasons to spread out operations, including reduced labor or production costs in the country where a plant is located, reduced distribution costs due to locating a plant nearer to the customers. For example, a company with sales in Europe may build a production facility in Europe as well, so that goods do not have to be shipped over the ocean from the US or Asia. Changes in location. Companies may locate their firms in new places, both to reduce labor and production costs and to take advantage of free trade zones. In a free trade zone, goods can travel freely between countries, and no tariffs are charged when crossing borders. This helps keep prices lower than if the goods were shipped in from another area. Increasing complexity. Although multiple locations and distributed operations may lead to reductions in cost, it also causes increasing complexity in the management of the interactions between the facilities. In addition, although a free trade area has fewer hurdles for moving goods within the region, companies may still have to adjust their marketing strategies for regional economies. For example, advertising in France still needs to be translated into French, even though a German company may send their goods there without dealing with border restrictions. Globalization of business is a movement toward operating in multiple countries, both to reach new markets and to reduce costs of production. The primary effects of globalization on a specific firm may include more widely distributed operations, changes in the location of business functions, and increasing complexity in managing the operation.
Chances are you've heard the term globalization thrown around, but what does it actually mean? In general, globalization refers to the way that people around the world have become more connected politically, economically, and socially. It opens local and nationalistic perspectives to a broader outlook of an interconnected and interdependent world with a free flow of capital, goods, and services across national frontiers. This can be interpreted as meaning the integration of world politics, economies, and cultures from one country or countries upon another country or countries. This integration can also include countries' political, cultural, educational, and perhaps religious views. In practical terms, it can also refer to the relinquishing of any trade barriers or tariffs that results in uninhibited economic development across all countries. Globalization in this context often refers to the idea that instead of having many different markets, all the world is one gigantic market. In other words, instead of participating solely in a local or regional market for goods or services, you've got the whole world to choose from. Still confused? Let's try it like this. Let's say that you've got two options for baking bread. You can either do it yourself, or you can pay someone to do it for you. The place in which you buy or sell services is a market. However, with globalization, that means there is a much bigger market. Someone may be able to sell you cheaper bread or better bread. Also, whereas before globalization your bread was probably made in a place not far away from you, now that is no longer the case. Your bread could even be made in a completely different country. In short, there are going to be some people who do well with globalization, while others may not fare so well. There are a number of different people who actually do very well in a globalized economy. For example, if you're able to sell a good or service at a lower price than everyone else, or sell a better product or service than everyone else, then you're going to be making even larger profits than before. Globalization allows low-cost producers and very high-quality producers to do well. That makes the world's consumers, like us, the big winner. Everyone benefits from lower-priced products as production shifts to lower-cost countries. Additionally, globalization favors larger companies that can afford to make such capital investments. It takes a lot of money to build an entirely new factory overseas, and bigger companies are more able to do it. They are also able to better afford increased transportation costs of moving goods back from a different country. Because of these new opportunities in transportation, logistics and shipping firms also do well in a globalized marketplace. Globalization also permits someone who just wants to save money to do well. They can find cheaper goods than they were able to acquire before, which means that they save money. Well, sounds great, doesn't it? But there are a lot of people who lose at globalization. Take your baker. Unless he can sell the absolute cheapest bread around, or if he can convince everyone that he sells the absolute best bread around, then chances are that he's out of business. People will simply go to one of the other ends of the spectrum. In a global economy, large companies can often produce their goods per unit cheaper elsewhere, which means many people who were in manufacturing jobs are finding themselves out of work when companies move to other locations to take advantage of lower production costs. Speaking of those cheaper locales, many of the people living there now have jobs. However, their jobs may not pay much. Instead, they're earning much less than workers in countries with higher wages. While they earn more than they made before, low wages in a globalized economy doesn't help them improve their financial lot in the long term. As you can imagine, there is plenty of debate on globalization. Whatever side you end up taking in the debate, there are a few essential points to keep in mind to help make sure that your argument is as intelligent as possible. Remember that globalization measures cost per unit, not per hour. This is crucial and helps explain why factory workers in Germany and Japan are not victims of globalization like those in the United States. This is because those countries have access to better technology, which means that they can produce at a lower cost per unit. In those countries, technology is so advanced that even while providing higher wages and better benefits, technological efficiency allows those companies to still make more money by leaving their operations in their home countries. A larger consideration is the orientation of American management. They are often fixated on the stock price and see their objective as creating wealth for shareholders, so they spend time on financial manipulations like share buybacks and trimming the number of employees, since both are rewarded with higher stock prices. In short, they make globalization good for the shareholders, but not good for the workers. Knowledge is power. More and more, being able to adapt is an asset. A job is not a safety net. However, a skill set is. People who work jobs that are replaceable overseas may find themselves without a paycheck, but those people who have a skill set that is needed locally will almost always have a job. Companies have to face consequences. Many companies may be tempted to use globalization to lower their costs far beyond what would be possible in the past, but they should be careful in doing so. After all, creating an economy in which consumers don't have the money to buy goods once the jobs have been moved overseas is not an economy that will generate many sales. Consumers who lost their jobs because the company moved the factory overseas won't have the money to buy the now cheaper goods. Alright, let's review. Globalization refers to the fact that the world is becoming one large marketplace instead of many smaller ones. However, there are winners and losers with globalization. Consumers tend to win, unless the drive for lower prices means that they lose their jobs. Meanwhile, any company that can be the best or the cheapest will do well under globalization. However, companies must always keep in mind that they... Have you ever been out shopping and took the time to notice where things were made? Tags declaring their product is made in the US, China, or Mexico are all commonplace. Over the last 25 years, we have seen tremendous advances in technology that have given us the ability to put almost anything and anyone from anywhere at our fingertips. The world as we know it is becoming an increasingly smaller place, with everyone being much more interconnected. This opening of local and nationalistic perspectives to a broader outlook of an interconnected and interdependent world with a free flow of capital, goods, and services across national frontiers is known as globalization. Globalization is the way that people around the world have become more connected politically, economically, and socially. This integration also includes and is not limited to countries' political, cultural, educational, and perhaps religious views. Globalization in this context often refers to the idea that instead of having many different markets, all the world is one gigantic market. In many ways, globalization is good for everyone, but there are also some unfortunate side effects. One of these is economic inequality, which we will discuss today. Economic inequality is the disparity in resources and wealth between two entities. To understand how economic inequality comes about from globalization, let's take a look at supply and demand. For our example, we will be talking about corn produced by the country Friesa. Friesa has been producing corn for as long as anyone can remember and has been trading with the countries Manzana and Naranja successfully. However, a new country, Sandia, has started to produce an abundance of corn and has started to sell it at a much cheaper price to Manzana and Naranja. Sandia's cheap corn has flooded the market and has forced Friesa to lower the price of their corn to remain competitive. This has resulted in the farmers from Friesa earning much less than they did previously. Let's take another look at how globalization can affect economic inequality. Friesa was a leader in the corn market. They had become wealthy off of their sales and their farmers were well paid. Now that Sandia has entered the market, things in Friesa aren't going so well. Farmers are earning less and struggling with their other financial obligations. While Friesa is still a leader, the introduction of Sandia's corn into their market is having a pronounced effect on their economy. Meanwhile, in Manzana and Naranja, there is a current economic boom, as the lowered price for corn has led to expendable income for those families. All of what is happening now is an example of economic inequality. How these countries and the people living in them are fluctuating between rich and poor is an example of the inequality that can occur with globalization. The availability of goods from other countries can upset the economic balance not only within the countries that produce, but also within those that consume. Another example of economic inequality that occurs from globalization is worker exploitation. Let's take another look at the countries from our previous example. Instead of corn, let's look at the production of tractors in Manzana and Naranja. Both countries make quality tractors, but Manzana is looking to become the leader. In order to maximize their profits, Manzana has opened up a plant overseas in Friesa. Many farmers in Friesa are out of work and are willing to work for much cheaper than their counterparts in Manzana. This means that Manzana can produce their tractors much cheaper than before, but sell them at the same price. The workers in Manzana are now losing their jobs as tractor plants are closing and moving to Friesa because of the cost savings. As you can see, globalization is the way that people around the world have become more connected, politically, economically, and socially. It promotes the exchange of goods, ideas, and services on a worldwide scale. This can include countries' political, cultural, educational, and perhaps religious views. Globalization in this context often refers to the idea that instead of having many different markets, all the world is one gigantic market. This can affect economic inequality in different ways. As the world opens up with more and more opportunities for trade and business, there will always be pros and cons to every deal. In our examples, we see how the wealth fluctuation between countries affects both producers and consumers and how it relates to economic inequality. Whether it's through supply and demand or worker exploitation, in global free market economies there is always a level of inequality. Countries will always strive to limit their risk for inequality through the use of trade agreements, legislation, and taxes and tariffs. However, it's difficult when things like supply and demand can lead to competitions that can damage the overall economies of less successful producers, or when worker exploitation allows for lower costs and greater profits. Other areas that could be impacted by globalization include religion, ethics, and politics. You pop open your laptop and call your friend in London, email your coworker in France, order new clothes from India, and apply for jobs in Switzerland. This interconnection via the internet is just one way that you are part of globalization. At its core, globalization is the way that people around the world have become more connected politically, economically, and socially. This integration also includes and is not limited to countries' political, cultural, educational, and perhaps religious views. The pros of globalization are seen long and far across the globe. However, along with the pros come cons that affect the livelihood of the same individuals who experience the benefits of globalization. From virtual connections to more affordable goods such as clothing and food, globalization has been beneficial to many aspects of society. This is because globalization has led to reduced cost of goods and increased trade. As you stop to fill up your car, paying approximately $2.50 to $3.50 per gallon of gas in the U.S., and then stroll into Walmart for your affordable food, clothing, and electronics, you are personally experiencing how globalization has assisted in decreasing the cost of goods and services through increased trade opportunities. Agreements made through trade initiatives have reduced the cost of importing or bringing in goods and exporting or sending out goods. The increased ability to trade with fewer barriers such as taxes or quotas has reduced the cost of trade. This makes the product sourced through trade more affordable to the average buyer. Additionally, many countries, including the U.S., Canada, and Mexico, have developed free trade agreements which allow trade to occur with no restrictions, making it easier and cheaper for countries to participate in international trade. This is one of the reasons that globalization has assisted in reducing the cost of goods. Globalization has also led to greater cultural understanding. Just as you personally experience increased communication through virtual tools like the internet, globalization has helped to improve human connections. Whether you're Googling about tribal cultures or meeting people from India, globalization allows you to learn about other cultures and develop a wider cultural understanding through the internet and increased opportunities for international travel. Globalization has also helped create a flexible labor market. Along with better communication are increased opportunities in the labor market. Because of globalization and enhanced technology, you can work across the world with relative ease. If you want to work in Brazil for an American company, this is completely feasible. Thus, labor doesn't have to come from the home country, and staff can be brought in from all over the world. This year you can work in Canada, and next year you can work in China. The labor market is significantly more flexible than it was pre-globalization. Enhanced international economic participation has also resulted from globalization. Bringing together a flexible labor market, increased trading opportunities, and enhanced communication systems, more countries can now participate in the international market. Whip open your closet and take a look at the tags and see where your items came from. Chances are you'll find tags from Taiwan, Indonesia, Pakistan, China, and various other countries. Because of the many benefits of globalization, more economies can grow and develop through participation in the international market. Even countries who have few natural resources can participate in technology development and manufacturing as companies continue to outsource labor. Globalization gives more opportunities to countries who may not have been able to enter the international market on their own. All of these benefits are great. However, there are also some negative side effects which impact society and culture. Unfortunately, there has been a loss of labor as a result of globalization. Yes, you can seek a career on just about any continent that allows you to legally obtain a work visa. This is fantastic if you're a high-level executive or an employee in a specialized position. The problem emerges for manufacturing jobs and employees who have laborer positions. Although free trade has increased opportunities for trade, it has reduced the cost of many goods, forcing competitors to actively seek cheaper ways to make their products. Additionally, not all countries equally experience free trade, and there are still many barriers, such as value-added tax or VAT, common in Europe, which lead manufacturers to outsource labor in order to decrease the cost of their goods. Outsourcing means that many jobs have left developed countries like the U.S. and have been moved to China, India, and other emerging economies where the cost of labor is significantly cheaper. This practice leaves hundreds and sometimes thousands of men and women out of work. Outsourcing jobs has posed several other problems regarding labor conditions. Not all countries abide by the same safety requirements as the U.S., and child labor is also legal in many emerging economies. Companies such as Nike, who have outsourced labor for certain products, have been linked to child labor or dangerous working conditions for all staff. The question then becomes, who is responsible? Because the companies do not directly run or operate some of these factories, they do not believe that they should be held responsible. Thus, globalization has caused a fierce debate regarding moral and ethical labor conditions. Finally, it's important to note that while globalization connects us and teaches us about other cultures, it also threatens the uniqueness of individual cultures. Each culture has something that it adds to society, and as we continue to link together technology and travel, these cultural differences begin to disintegrate. There is an increased push for countries to westernize and act more like the U.S. and Western Europe. However, westernization threatens the distinctive cultural personalities of many countries, which may have repercussions we can't fully account for at this time. Globalization, or the way that people around the world have become more connected politically, economically, and socially, has had many positive effects on the world. Because of globalization, you can purchase cheaper goods, communicate with individuals from all over the world, and work in just about any country. Importantly, globalization has also opened our eyes to various cultures, which has increased people's understanding of one another. It's also made importing or bringing in goods and exporting or sending out goods increasingly cheaper, thus allowing for better economic growth. This has been done through the use of free trade agreements, which allow trade to occur with no restrictions, making it easier and cheaper for countries to participate in international trade. Along with all of these benefits, though, are cons that include loss of jobs due to increased use of outsourcing, abuse of emerging labor market conditions, and a loss of cultural identity as there is more intermixing between nations. The effects of globalization have impacted local culture and society greatly, and each one differently. Evaluating the pros and cons help us to weigh the cost and benefit of continued globalization. Everyone loves to talk about how globalization has changed our lives. Coca-Cola sells soda around the world, and the United Nations acts as a world government to try to make the world a safer place. But how does it affect laws in cities like Lagos, Nigeria, and Long Beach, California? How has globalization affected local governments? First of all, let's define globalization. Globalization is the way that countries and people around the world have become more connected and interdependent economically, politically, and socially. It has made it possible for a person in Lebanon to eat a McDonald's cheeseburger, talk to a friend in New York City on Skype about fracking, and listen to Korean pop music on Spotify. But it also means that local governments have to deal with international companies coming to do business in their towns, and their local citizens are demanding more of a voice and can unite more easily than ever before using the internet. Globalization can impact the local government from the top down or from the bottom up. Let's take a look at some examples of how that might look. As countries have become more interconnected, they have needed to work together more. For example, countries work together to protect the environment or to fight terrorism. This has led to the development of world government. After World War II, the United Nations, or UN, was formed as a kind of world government. But the UN can't really govern the world. It needs local governments to turn their policies into realities on the ground. For example, the UN has asked that local governments become involved in making sure that human rights are protected. After all, the UN is just a bunch of ambassadors from different countries that all meet in New York City. They can't actually control the everyday lives of someone who lives in Jeonju, South Korea, but the local government in the city of Jeonju can. It can pass laws that protect human rights, and the police can make sure that people follow these laws. Now, local government must take international norms and make that a norm where they live, such as women's rights to an education or protecting the environment. This is called domesticating international norms, and this could look different in different places. For instance, the UN supports protecting the environment, so a local government in California could pass a law that charges a small fee for using plastic grocery bags, while the local government in a small village in Guatemala might focus on helping people use natural resources more efficiently for agriculture. Sometimes globalization forces local governments to accept ideas and laws that they don't really like. This happens most often when it comes to economic globalization. For a small town in Bangladesh, it's exciting to become involved in the global economy when a big company like Walmart wants to open factories in your town and employ your citizens. But to keep those big companies around, it means the local government might look the other way on workers' rights. That can leave people working for slave wages, or even allowing companies to harm the environment or remove people from their homes. These big international corporations can threaten to leave and take their business to some other city. Local governments want to keep the business and jobs in their city, so they might agree to whatever policies the big companies want. In that way, corporations like ExxonMobil or Coca-Cola can have more say in the local government than the people who live there. More recently, however, the U.S. passed new tax laws that may affect how companies approach global expansion. These 2018 tax laws decrease corporate tax laws within the U.S. significantly in some cases. These reduced tax levels may reduce the level of business investment overseas by American corporations. What is fascinating about globalization is that even as it has created big world government, it has also made it possible for tiny organizations and small local governments to have a say in the world. As more people have been given a voice through the spread of technology, more people are demanding that their voices be heard. On the internet, everyone has access to Google, and everyone can leave comments on Facebook or a forum, and they can start a petition on change.org. But let's say a group of people in Argentina is campaigning for better access to healthcare. Well, they might get help from international organizations who help spread their message. But ultimately, they need their local government to pass new laws and policies to help them get better access to healthcare. These citizens in Argentina can use the power of globalization to strengthen their cause and get their local government to act. There have been reactions against globalization from the bottom up. Great Britain voted to leave the European Union, and voters voiced outrage against globalization and wanted more control over their local government. However, countries and people are now so interconnected through technology and trade that it seems more likely that local governments must continue to find ways to work effectively with the forces of globalization. Globalization is the way that countries and people have become more connected politically, economically, and socially. The internet has played an important role in giving people all over the world a voice. That means that local governments are impacted by globalization from the top and from the bottom. That means that local governments must take ideas and laws from global government at the top, like the UN, and domesticate them locally. It also means that citizen movements have become stronger and louder and demand more influence over local government. Finally, economic globalization has been tricky for local governments to handle.
If you choose to buy organic or local food, you're already familiar with how the environment is affected by globalization. How we choose our food is just one way we make choices related to the environment. Many of us want to know what hormones and pesticides are in our food. We also may wonder why certain foods, like fish, are scarce. Well, it could be that countries with fewer regulations are infringing on and polluting fishing habitats. Having shared waterways means that businesses and countries must share in the responsibility to care for them. Let's look at some of the global issues that impact the environment. Globalization is a relatively new phenomenon in the business world. Progress in technology, transportation, and communication give most businesses the chance to operate internationally. Given how fast decisions must be made when working across time zones and continents, globalization presents unique problems in how it affects the environment. After all, when we work together globally, we share the same environment. When working internationally, economies are intertwined, which means natural resources are shared. Timber, minerals, water, fish, oil, and natural gas are just a few examples. So, is globalization bad for the environment? Well, it depends. When a market goes global, greater production is usually demanded to increase supply. This means that foreign companies move in quickly to meet that supply. Some companies may feel an ethical responsibility to leave an area unharmed after their work is done, but others may just want to do what the regulations say and move on. Having trade agreements and work permits, increased environmental regulations, incentives for hiring local, and requirements to involve the community may help. These protections, however, can hinder economic growth in the short term. Industries that have to deal with environmental regulations are slowed in their progress. Having to work through regulations like permits and inspections takes both time and money. Let's look at some examples of the effects of globalization on the environment. If gold is found for the first time in a small town in Peru, everyone sees dollar signs. Your company specializes in mining gold and will work to recover a large part of it. You're based in the United States, but you have a highly skilled labor force and the most technologically advanced machines to make sure any small amount of gold doesn't go untapped. But you have no connection to the area, which means you have no incentive to leave it in good condition. Unless you feel a moral obligation to do so, or regulations force you to, your company will swoop in, make a profit, and leave. In the short term, this is great for the local economy. Not only will citizens get payments for the gold, they will spend it locally. We see increased sales at hotels, grocery stores, eateries, and convenience stores. This gives the local economy a boost, right? Sure, but in the long run, we see wear and tear on the infrastructure, problems with water supply, and complications of contaminated and unstable soil. Problems with sinkholes is a common example. In many instances, once the gold is gone and the companies move on, there's little left to the area. Deforestation to make room for growth in both development and agriculture has become an issue for countries that have a large amount of timber. Forest land is an essential part of our ecosystem. Rainforests contribute ingredients for medication, provide clean air, and protect endangered species. South America's forests are being displaced due to the demand for more agriculture space. The area has a perfect climate for growing fruits and vegetables that are in demand internationally. The financial aspects of this international trade look good on the surface. In the short run, it certainly pumps money into the countries that export the food. Over the long run, however, losing this forest land will increase our global temperature and reduce our clean air. For example, many of the problems that we have with global warming can be attributed to deforestation. Deforestation is similar to mining in that the short-term profits have to be balanced against the long-term environmental effects. Countries have different environmental regulations. When economies are interconnected, so are air, water, and land. Pollutants created in one area will have an effect on another. An example of this is the 2011 Fukushima Daiichi nuclear disaster. Caused by an earthquake and tsunami, Japan's nuclear power plant could no longer cool itself. The leaks caused severe short and long-term detriments to the community. Besides the health risks to those in the surrounding area, contaminated debris and water were concerns for other countries. For example, California residents were fearful of radiated water, contaminated fish, and beach debris. A lack of standards related to earthquake design were blamed for the disaster, but the potential global environmental effects were not enough to put any proactive protections into play. Let's review. Globalization is the progress in technology, transportation, and communication that give most businesses the chance to operate internationally and attain greater production. It can lead to a lot of short-term gains, such as increase in food sales and an improvement of wages, leading to a boost in the local economy. However, as globalization evolves at a rapid rate, it may be time to look at trying to find ways to balance growth with protecting the environment. We can see from our examples of mining, deforestation, and pollution that any import we purchase may be tied to an environmental problem, such as a nuclear accident leading to things like contaminated water, a loss of fish, and a reduction of energy supply. As with most international dilemmas, the effect of globalization and the environment is dependent on governments and businesses working together to find a middle ground.
Globalization is the marketing, production, and distribution of goods and services on an international scale. It affects marketing, production, and distribution of goods and services on an international scale. As technology, transportation, and communication systems expand, financial and trade regulations adapt. The integration of world markets, exchange of population and ideas, and the creation of international institutions have given us a great opportunity to be successful in global markets. Globalization is an economic term that describes the seamless exchange of wealth among countries. It's created when certain worldwide changes take effect. Economic markets expand. Being able to buy and sell quickly through foreign markets means that countries with open borders have more opportunities to recruit businesses and improve their employment and growth rates. However, if a country previously protected an industry from competition, opening up the economic market for that industry may prove detrimental. A home country may not be able to compete with lower-priced imports. Either way, the market for a company's goods and services has the potential to expand internationally. Trade barriers are reduced. Lowering or even eliminating trade barriers results in more imports and exports. This means customers have more choices. The competition should drive prices down. Customers benefit from more choices, but may need to carefully scrutinize these products for lower quality. But for countries that make a higher price substitute, the effects could be detrimental. Countries that make these lower price goods would get an economic boost from exporting. Reducing trade barriers is a huge incentive for businesses looking to expand beyond their borders. Instantaneous communication becomes commonplace. Being able to communicate from almost anywhere in the world using a tablet or smartphone means anyone can be reached from afar. You can make deals, communicate in real time, have meetings, and delegate as needed. For example, employees in Japan, Russia, and the United States can do a conference call or talk with a stream of quick text messages. Removing technical obstacles to communicating remotely makes it possible for employees to talk at any time of the day, and this makes it easier to work effectively in any time zone. It's important to remember that there are drawbacks that come along with globalization. In particular, world changes can have some dramatic effects. Global change is the impact of human activity on the Earth system, which includes anything that affects our land, water, and air. Some of the most common issues we hear about are environmental, health, and social. It's important to remember that scientists disagree on some of these issues and their impacts, but most do agree that these worldwide changes do affect globalization. Let's look at a few examples. Environmental issues like global warming, deforestation, greenhouse gas emissions, and melting polar ice caps interact directly with globalization. For example, in Latin America, deforestation is becoming a problem as the country expands its agricultural land to meet global food demands. This has severely depleted the rainforests. Social issues like health, wealth, and education are also affected. We have diseases like Ebola, AIDS, SARS, and pandemic flu that spread quickly because of open borders. With transportation improvements, we freely travel from one continent to another to make business deals, and people spread these diseases wherever they go. Some individuals even flee their homelands to reach countries so they can get better health care, taking the disease with them. And we can't forget that worldwide changes open up economic opportunities in countries where human rights violations exist. For example, there are countries where women are not allowed to drive, vote, or work. These are important issues we have to take into consideration when determining where and how we will expand internationally. It's important to know a country's cultural norms if you want to do business there. You don't want to offend your partners, but you also don't want to look like you're supporting any human rights violations by investing there. Human rights issues can stimulate or thwart the globalization efforts of a country. Globalization is the way that people around the world have become more connected politically, economically, and socially. It offers many opportunities to companies looking to expand. If the demand is there and the company can meet that demand, profits will increase. Economic markets, trade barriers, and communication are all directly connected to globalization. These set the groundwork for companies to operate in a global environment. Globalization tends to have very positive and noticeable effects on an economy. However, there are worldwide global changes, or the impacts of human activity on the Earth's systems, which includes anything that affects our land, water, and air, that can have negative effects on and because of globalization. These are sometimes less noticeable because it takes time for them to develop. Environmental, social, and human rights are what we looked at in this lesson. It is important to understand that globalization is something that is affected by many variables.